Hello, beautiful soul. It's David Ault. And can I ask a favor that you stop what you're doing right now and just do your best to bring your focus and attention right here and humor me when I ask you to take a deep breath. Take a deep, deep breath. You ready? Humor me again. Don't just watch, but participate and take a deep breath. You ready? And then one more, and see if this last one you can make it more full than the two previous. So work on that capacity. You ready? Just bring it in. And let it go. Awesome. Welcome to the gathering. So there was this sort of hilltop stress experience happening in me yesterday. And it actually isn't just within me. I've noticed it. Maybe I'm taking it on, but I've noticed it in the people that I counsel and coach. I noticed it within the dynamic of the people on my board for my foundation and my circle of friends. There's this elevated stress. And I also noticed it yesterday for me. And so my intent with that is I'm going to guess that you have stress too. And I don't want us to make that wrong. I want us to allow it to be a teaching tool, a reminder, a very loving and masterful reminder. And so the first thing that I did yesterday was exactly what I just asked you to do. It's to breathe. I see breath as a sort of brake pad because the stress is from a runaway train of thought. And I say runaway train because you know how fast and how energetic and how widespread thought can be. And the stress is really pulsating and channeling itself through us and through the neurotransmitters of our brain because of our thoughts. And those thoughts are focused on something equated to a beautiful inspiration that came to me many years ago. And it's this: all stress or pain comes from a mistrust in the divine. I want to say that again. All pain or all stress, like we're talking about, is the result of a mistrust in the divine. So we're not going to make ourselves wrong about that. What we're going to understand that is a natural, primal instinct, stress. What we have at our availability is an evolution of consciousness. And so we're going to take something that's primal and we're going to match it now with expanded evolutionary self-awareness. And so you can never extract all things primal, but what we can do is begin to learn how to work with them. And that's the beauty of looking at things like this from a compassionate nature. Any path or teacher that makes stress as wrong, meaning that you're doing something wrong, is really self-defeating. And so what I want to do is assist you to not make the stress wrong, because again, it's all prevalent. I don't know anyone right now in my circle that isn't experiencing some heightened sense of stress. But what we get to do is go, it's a teacher. And so let's break that down and apply that for ourselves. So yesterday, I'm having these thoughts about my foundation. They're old thoughts. They're thoughts about, wow, we just don't have enough help. We can't get help because we don't have the budget to hire people. And if you don't hire people and give people a salary, then volunteers come and go. And there's only so much that a volunteer can do because they're having to manage their life. And you're starting to now pick up the train of thought that is driving itself or traveling at speeds of no solution, just despair, destruction, right? And unless you stop the motion of that thought, then that will continue and perpetuate. There's no end in sight to how infinite that train of thought and that train can travel. The train of thought. That's what it is. It's a train of thought, and it's on a track that will just go and go and go and go. But you and I have the power to put the brake pads on that, first of all, through breath. If you can recognize the fact that, oh my God, that train of thought is out of control, breathe. And so, where does this mistrust in the divine come from? So, first of all, what is the divine? Maybe to some of you, the divine is God, and maybe you might see God as a deity in the sky. For me, the divine is the intrinsic wisdom and the intelligence of a divine design called life, the infrastructure of all creation. I know very little about the mechanics of that infrastructure. For example, I cannot tell you why the planets do what they do, why the understanding of everything cosmological. I don't know that. I witness it to a very small degree just by my ability to look up and see planets and stars. So that tells me that there is a vastness to life that I rarely will understand. I can't tell you exactly the process or the synthesis of how nature seemingly seems to die in a seasonal pattern and then knows when to return back. But there's something within the cycle of that and the mechanics of that and the photosynthesis of that and the dependency of that and the mineralization of that and its role in so many things, the role of the tree in order to help cleanse the air. And you start to see just in such a brief little couple of sentences, the ongoing vastness of the divine. So I'm going to call it the divine. My stress is a mistrust in all of those things that I cannot completely comprehend. And yet those things have been managing and replicating life since the dawn of time. And so when I have a mistrust in it, it's because I am limited in my understanding. I am confined to the five senses. Right now, I am sitting at my desk. There's a window right there, and I can look out into the front yard and I can see the neighbor's house across the street, and I can see the grove of trees behind the neighbor's house, and I can't see anything past that. But I trust and know that there is much beyond that. Why? Because I have an experience of it. And so the development of experience helps me in my primal mistrust. And so one of the ways in which breath and leaning into the mystery is that the more that I navigate the unknown, the more experience I gain. If I were to solely operate and think of life itself just by what I can see out this window, can you see the limitedness of that? Can you see the folly of that? And yet, when stress is governing us, that's exactly what we are doing. It's like we are looking out a window and discounting the vastness of solution and resource and opportunity and divine timing that awaits us. And so again, stress then can become a beautiful teacher when I'm feeling stress. And then what's under the stress? It's fear. And what is the fear from? Well, my beloved partner and I have these great conversations about something called the four primitive fountains. The four primitive fountains, and they govern almost the entire framework of our human emotion. So when I'm working with people and when I'm listening to their stress and detecting what the fear is behind the stress, it's always associated with one of the four primitive fountains. And those are food, sex, sleep, and then the last one, which to me is the most prevalent, self-preservation. The word that I find works really well with the fourth one, self-preservation, is security. And so when there is an insecurity in food, when there is a false belief system around sex and its natural primitive installation inside of us, when there is a struggle with something as primitive as sleep, then what we begin to understand is that sets off a chain of thought that causes stress, in the striving, in the fear that those things will be eradicated. And for me, where I get caught most is the stress in the security. There was a large portion of my life where that stress and that fear of security ruled me. Today, I see that I have transferred that into the self-preservation or the security of my foundation and the global education work that we do in the world. Because what happens is I think that, oh my God, if there's not enough help, if there's not enough money to hire help, then the dependency on a volunteer who will come and go because they've got to manage and work their own four primal fountains. And it starts to become, again, this endless loop, right? And so yesterday, what I did was I just breathed and I thought, David, where is the stress coming from? It's coming from one of the four primal fountains. And for me, it's the security. And so what do I get to tell myself? I get to tell myself that in the case of the security or the self-preservation of my work with my foundation, that it will be what it will be. I don't mean to sound so flippant with that, because there is a wired sense of urgency and responsibility that I feel about the 1,000+ children that we take care of annually, the comings and goings of those children, and how there are more children in line for education, the communities within the slums, the hygiene, the sanitation, the dire need for water. And this is where yin yang and the duality of life gets really complicated, because I start to believe that somehow I can control those things. And so in my belief that I am the one controlling, I am the one that is solely going to fix or do those things, I take on a false sense of responsibility, and thus I cultivate stress. When in reality, those situations will always exist. There will always be inequality. There will always be famine, food insecurity. There will always be the need to help people. And so the way in which the divine, this meticulous design is set up, is that as a human, as a soul in a human form in this divine design, my role isn't to fix it. My role is to bring relief to it in whatever way that I can. My role isn't to try to preserve the longevity of the thing or the form of the thing, which you see happens when we get institutionalized in our thinking with regards to preserving an institution or leaving a legacy. We get caught up in the ego and it gets very muddied. And so all of that is stress producing. And what I saw was I had just lapsed back into that. It was like, oh my God, we got to keep this going. We got to keep this going. Of course, we want to keep it going. Of course, we will always need funding. Of course, the aim and the goal and the work and the planning, all again within the realm of being human, is necessary. But you see, in the understanding of the divine, in the evolvement of consciousness, we realize that there's a different approach to that. It isn't primitive anymore. What we start to understand is that resource follows commitment. Do you know, if I was having a conversation with a cave person and I was talking to them about faith, you got to have faith, man, that you're going to make the kill and that you're going to find enough animals and that winter is, you got to, it doesn't register. We're not that anymore. There is an evolution, a natural evolution in the human infrastructure of the brain and the things around us. And is it equally distributed in regards to the resources? No. But for someone like me, or perhaps someone like you who does have a resource, we get to activate and understand that in the unlimitedness of that, resource follows commitment. So I'm not then sitting here going, I'm not going to do this until I have the resource. I'm going to make the commitment, and I'm going to give that commitment to the divine, to that infrastructure, to that intelligence, to the energy of that, which now can take that and knows exactly the timing, the personality, the circumstance, and the wherewithal for me to be able to trust that forward movement. Stress for me comes when I completely obliterate that and my ego wants to take it back and to think that I'm in control. I hope you can perhaps see some of your stress in that formula of what I did. But all of that could not be reset. And it'll probably happen again tomorrow. And the next day when yet another problem or opportunity to solve something appears before me. But the truth of the matter is, breath then can put the brake pad on that unconscious just blazing forward. And so much can be reset in that moment. So don't make stress wrong. Don't make the 4 primitive fountains in you and the way in which they govern your emotions wrong. That's your origin. That's your ancestry. But what you can do is begin to know how to work with that now from self-awareness, from developing consciousness. And you won't know that, just like I won't know that there's something behind the grove of trees of my neighbor's house as I'm staring at it right now. You won't know that there's something beyond that, solution beyond that, until you put this into practice and you have the experience or the effect of the practice. Until you commit to the commitment, and then watch how the moment that you say yes to being committed to something, to bringing good into the world, that the resource follows. That reminds me, I think I even looked this up, that incredible quote by William H. Murray that says, until one is committed, there is hesitancy. I'm going to stop right there. Isn't that true? Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, meaning I'm thinking about something creative in doing that. I'm thinking about putting myself out there. But until one is actually committed in the action of that or the pursuit of that, there's always hesitancy. And the hesitancy is what? The fear of what if there's not enough? And he says that until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of that truth, which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. I will tell you, that's true. It's true that until one commits, there is hesitancy. There is such a lineage of excuse. There is so much opinion. Oh my God, that's why perhaps sometimes you should not tell people what you're thinking about what you want to do. Because the opinion, the cloud of opinion, the cloud of inaction, the cloud of disappointment, the cloud of fear will come and try to warn you or judge what it is that you're doing, judge you for wanting to do that. You keep those things within your heart. And then when you are committed, you can begin to watch, as the author of that quote just said, providence begin to bring the resource. I can think about, wow, I want to explore what's beyond those grove of trees behind the house. Is there something? But until I'm committed to walk out the front door and to go and find the way in which to get beyond that, I will never know. And the same is for you. And so I am committed. The people who serve alongside me on my board of my foundation, my global education initiative, they're committed. And what we have to remind ourselves week after week, season after season, year after year, is that whatever apparent hardship occurs, whatever need arises, and it arises every day, that it's the commitment, the continuance, the putting one foot in front of the other that allows resource to be birthed. It's happened time and time again. And you can personalize that. I'm asking you to personalize that because I believe that is the main balm or relief to this stress. The stress that I have, the stress that you have, the fear of security. So know that commitment, resource follows commitment. And that pain and that fear comes from a mistrust in that. Give yourself the ability to trust and to commit in something so that you can begin to widen your personal experience of that. And in that experience, you grow wiser and wiser and wiser. And stress becomes not so much the master anymore, other than something that just kind of comes and knocks on the door to remind us. So stress, then yesterday it was like, oh, and then I thought, no, it's a friend. It's a teacher. Welcome it in. And I breathe. Thank you for listening. I hope that helps. God bless.